It was 6 a.m. when I sat down at my post in the operations center, the cold desert air whipping through the canvas of the tent where I was stationed. The sun had barely risen, and yet the chaos of the day had already begun. I was surrounded by other soldiers, all focused on their missions, none of us knowing what the day would bring. The faint buzz of radio static mixed with the distant hum of aircraft overhead, a constant reminder of the danger that lingered just beyond our perimeter. It had been like this for months now, routine, yet unpredictable. My name is Ryan Thompson, 38 years old, and I've been serving in the Army for over a decade. A senior specialist, I had seen more than my fair share of combat zones. But no matter how many battles I'd fought or how many days I had spent away from home, nothing prepared me for what happened on that fateful morning. It wasn't the war. It wasn't the long hours or the daily dangers we faced. No, it was an email, a simple email, that completely upended my life. My phone buzzed, vibrating against the cold metal of the table. I glanced at the screen. It was from my boss, Daniel Lewis. I had been working as a senior systems analyst for a tech firm back in the States, Meridian Technologies. I had been deployed in the Middle East for the past 3 months, but I was due to return home soon. A part of me had been counting the days until I could escape the dust and the constant tension of life in the desert. I thought about Sarah, my wife, and how we could finally get back to normal, whatever that was now. The subject line was short, too short for my liking. Your position has been eliminated. A wave of confusion swept over me. I felt a cold rush wash over me as I opened the email. Ryan, we regret to inform you that, effective immediately, your position as Senior Systems Analyst has been eliminated. Due to restructuring within the company, we are unable to continue your employment at this time. Please arrange to return any company equipment as soon as possible. Your final paycheck will be processed and sent to your home address. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely, Daniel Lewis, CEO, Meridian Technologies. I read it twice, unable to comprehend what had just happened. My mind raced. I was still in the desert, fighting for my country, and here I was being fired through an email. No phone call, no warning, just a cold, impersonal message. I couldn't even focus on my work for the rest of the day. I sat there, staring at the screen, trying to piece together what had gone wrong. The company had been growing. I had been there since the beginning, practically building the infrastructure from the ground up. In the years I'd spent with Meridian, I'd done everything, setting up the servers, managing the network, securing the data. My job had been the backbone of the company. No one else knew the systems as I did. Yet here I was, thousands of miles away, without a job. I tried to brush it off, but anger was slowly bubbling inside me. How could they do this? Was I really so expendable? Daniel, my boss, had always been an MBA type, young, ambitious, and constantly looking for ways to streamline things. Over the past year, he'd slowly been pushing me out, sidelining me in favor of younger, less experienced employees. It had been a subtle shift, more meetings where my opinions were disregarded, fewer opportunities for advancement. But this was the final blow. But to fire me while I was deployed? That was low, even for someone like him. I closed my laptop, stood up from my seat, and walked outside the tent. The air was dry, and the sky above was a dull shade of brown. I took a deep breath and tried to calm my racing thoughts. I needed to figure out what happened, and I needed to act fast. I couldn't let this slide. Not after everything I'd sacrificed. It was then that I made a decision, one that would change everything. I would get my revenge. Not just any revenge, though. It would be calculated, precise. I would make sure that Daniel, my so-called boss, would regret firing me. The first thing I did was gather everything I could on Meridian's internal systems. I knew the security protocols better than anyone. I had set them up years ago. After all, I had access to everything, and I wasn't about to let it go to waste. I called my wife, Sarah, back home in Georgia. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Ryan," she said, her voice filled with concern. "How's everything going?" "Not great," I replied. "I just got an email. I'm fired. My position was eliminated." She was silent for a moment. "What? That's insane. Do they even know what you're doing over there?" "They don't care," I said, the frustration in my voice growing. I need you to do something for me. Anything. Go to the storage unit we set up last year. I need you to grab a few things for me. I can't explain now, but I'll need them soon. I'm on it. The next few days were a blur. I kept my focus on the mission, but my mind was always on Meridian, on Daniel, and on how to get back at him. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't afford to make any mistakes. If I was caught, it would all be over. The tension in the air around me was palpable. Every new mission felt like it could be my last, and the uncertainty of my future with Meridian only added to the pressure. I began reviewing the financials of the company. Meridian had been receiving substantial investments recently, and I suspected that there was more going on behind the scenes than I knew. There had been small signs of financial irregularities, things I had seen but never thought twice about before. The payments to vendors were increasing at an alarming rate, and some of the invoices I had personally signed off on seemed off. I started to dig deeper into the company's accounts, using the access I had to pull reports and check the company's transactions. Sure enough, there were payments to a vendor, Apex Solutions Group, whose address was nothing more than a UPS store. The payments were increasing, month after month, with no real explanation for why the company was making them. I ran a background check on Apex, and everything about the company screamed shell operation. I felt my stomach churn. This wasn't just about getting revenge for being fired. This was bigger. I had stumbled into a web of corruption that stretched far beyond Daniel. When I finally returned to the States, I knew exactly what I had to do. My plan was in motion. I didn't contact Sarah about what I had found. I didn't need to. Everything I had been working on was about to pay off. I reached out to a former colleague of mine, James, who had become a lawyer after leaving the company. I briefed him on the situation and told him what I had uncovered. He immediately agreed to help me. We had a lot of work ahead of us, but this wasn't something I could handle alone. We started by collecting more evidence. I spent hours going through the financial records, cross-referencing dates, and tracking down the connections between Daniel and Apex Solutions Group. It didn't take long for me to discover that the payments were being funneled into accounts linked to Daniel family members. It was a scheme, a fraud operation that had been running for months. Daniel had been siphoning money off the top, inflating costs, and funneling the difference to his family's businesses. I had the proof. I had everything I needed to bring him down. I knew I had to act fast. The next step was critical. I had to make sure that Daniel didn't have a chance to cover his tracks. I contacted the board of directors, anonymously at first. I sent them a detailed email with all the information I had uncovered, including the transactions, the connections to Daniel's family, and the forged documents. The email sent shockwaves through the company. Within hours, Daniel's office was surrounded by FBI agents. The investigation into the fraud scheme was already underway. The silence on my end was deafening. I didn't make a public scene. I didn't have to. The evidence spoke for itself. The next day, I received a call from the board asking me to come in and speak with them about the situation. They were ready to offer me a new position, head of security, the very position I had been overlooked for before. But I wasn't interested in their offer. I had already made my point. I had taken down the man who thought he could replace me, and in doing so, I had exposed a much bigger problem within the company. I was free of the chains that had bound me for years, and I wasn't about to go back. Months later, as I looked back on everything that had happened, I couldn't help but smile. Daniel had been fired, arrested, and was facing charges for embezzlement. The company had been forced to pay back millions of dollars to the investors. The investors who had trusted Meridian with their money. The ones who had been blind to the corruption running deep within the company's walls. As for me, I had found a new job. I had a clean slate. I was working with a team that respected me and knew what I brought to the table. I had gotten my revenge, not with rage, but with precision and strategy. And as I sat in my new office, staring out at the city skyline, I realized something. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about screaming or making a scene. Sometimes, the best revenge is taking the high road, keeping your cool, and watching as the people who wronged you fall apart under the weight of their own mistakes. My boss thought he could fire me and get away with it. But in the end, I had the last laugh.